Welcome everyone to Building Conversations, our third or fourth installment really this week. We've been getting great feedback, so we do want to hear from you about potential for next topics and comments about this show. And if at any time you have a question for Mark or myself, please type it in, and when we get to that section, we'll do our best to answer your questions. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and we'll get the show on the road. Thank you very much. Well, as I said, welcome again. We have Mark Bernhardt from Bernhardt Contracting in Victoria with us today, and I'm so pleased to see so many of you with us today. A few things I wanted to cover today: an introduction to Passive House. We'll have a conversation with Mark, some questions and answers, and then a little bit more information about Passive House Canada. First, a little bit about myself, and you know, I apologize for anyone who has joined us before. A few of these slides will be repetitive, but there's a significant number of new people on board, so I want to just take a little bit of time to introduce myself and the rest of the team. So my name is Chris Ballard. I am the CEO of Passive House Canada. I've been the CEO for a little over 5 months, I guess, so relatively new to this position, but thoroughly enjoying myself here. How I got here is a bit of a circuitous route. I've been a journalist, I've been a town councillor. Most recently, I was the Minister of Environment and Climate Change for Ontario. I've done a number of different things in my life that lead me to this real simple conclusion that my experience and research has utterly convinced me that this is the way, the Passive House way is the way that we need to build in retrofit. Passive House building standards are science-driven, they're verifiable, there's no greenwashing. Passive House construction means healthy, resilient, and lower GHG emitting buildings, really important in these times. And Passive House Canada education is the gold standard of high performance building instruction. And that's been my, what I have learned over the years, and certainly as I take on this role of CEO, that's driven home every day. One more thing that I want to point out before we move on. This is a great picture. This is Saskatchewan Conservation House in Regina, Saskatchewan. And if you're new to Passive House Canada, this may be a new image to you, but some people think that Passive House is a European standard, and it is. It was codified by the Europeans, but really has much of its roots, much of its pedigree really in this building you see in front of you, the Saskatchewan Conservation House. 1977, Canadians were building high performance homes. This is the first one that we have here. When OPEC, the OPEC oil embargo was in full swing, and North America was worried that we would not have enough energy to heat our homes in the wintertime, the federal government funded a group of scientists to research and build a house that could withstand cold winters. They picked Regina, they built this house. People are still living in this house today, and it is still performing to the same high standards, we'll say the high low energy standards that it did before. And let me just carry on talking about our guest today, Mark Bernhardt from Bernhardt Contracting. Last August, Mark's firm completed the Greenpoint project, which will be the first living building challenge and certified Passive House Plus in the world. And I know that Mark also spends a significant amount of his time helping other builders reach high performance level. He's also on the board executive of CHBA BC. So I know that that the Bernhardt team has a number of projects underway, each of which is going to push further into what is possible with high performance housing. So we'll get to Mark in a moment. I wanted to take a few minutes again just to run quickly through what a Passive House is. A lot of people think that Passive House are relegated or restricted to single family, maybe a small multiple family residential units. But here we have the proposed Alberni Street Passive House Towers in Vancouver, BC. And it gives you a glimpse of what is possible when you build to passive house standards. So what is passive house? It's a building standard. It is the most rigorous voluntary energy-based standard in the design and construction industry today, worldwide. Passive house buildings consume as much as 90% less heating and cooling energy than conventional buildings. It's also a methodology. It's a way of building. It's a way of designing buildings to achieve exceptional energy efficiency and superior thermal comfort. Heating and cooling loads are minimized through passive design, and it results in a healthy interior, good quality air on the interior, and a resilient building, which is more and more important as we face increasing challenges of the climate crisis. Continuing, what is a passive house? Well, it's not passive, and it's not just for houses. Our name comes from the German passive house. It's a bit of an incorrect translation, but we'll work with it. Passive house is passive only in that the building envelope does most of the work to maintain comfortable temperatures, and this permits simpler, smaller mechanical systems. It also applies to both new and existing buildings, and I think for those who live in older metropolitan areas of Canada, the ability to renovate to high energy and interior quality standards is paramount as we need and strive to meet our GHG reduction targets. The EnerPHit standards are proven. These are the Passive House EnerPHit standards. They are a proven and financially viable methodology for deep energy retrofits. So very quickly, let me run through the attributes. When you build to passive house standards, you will have a superior insulated building envelope. You'll have high quality windows with solar orientation. You'll have a ventilation system with heat recovery. You'll have good thermal or no thermal bridging. It will be thermal bridge free. It will be an airtight structure. You'll feel better when you work and live and play in these buildings because you have year-round stable indoor air quality and temperature. It will be quiet and comfortable throughout the changing seasons. There is, of course, a substantial reduction in energy use and operating costs, a simple to use, durable systems throughout, and of course, all of this adds up to giving you that priceless peace of mind. So a little bit about Passive House Canada. Our mission is to make the international Passive House standard of building performance understood, achievable, and adopted by government, industry professionals, building suppliers, and consumers across Canada. And we're doing this through education, advocacy, events, and building projects. If you believe in Passive House, if you want to support what we're doing, then I would encourage you to become a member today. You can do so on our web, and if you become a member, our education and other online products are sold to you for a greatly reduced amount. And really what you're doing is supporting our association's work with government and business and contractors and professionals to push the Passive House standards here in Canada. I am here with Mark Bernhardt, and welcome, Mark.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, very good. So, Mark, a few things about Passive House and Passive House Canada. Can you tell us? Let's start off by having you giving us a bit of background about yourself and about Bernhardt Contracting.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you know, I've been a builder, I think now for a little over a decade. We started actually in the commercial end of things, doing commercial TIs and things like that. And when it came time that we needed a new house for ourselves and actually my parents to kind of live and be and grow old and grow as a family, we started looking around for what were we going to do, right? And in our commercial contracts, we had kind of developed a bit of an interest and a niche for doing kind of weird stuff. And that's I think the simple term for it. We did a lot of X-ray offices and stuff like that. So if anybody needs a Faraday cage to shield the voices, or if they have a piece of scientific equipment that they need to shield, that's the sort of thing that we did. So when it came to building our own house, there was no way it was going to be just kind of a normal thing. And I also have a Bachelor of Science degree. I have a science background. So does most of my family. And so we had a keen interest in environment and all that sort of stuff that goes with it. And so we started looking at the various different standards that were out there, sort of measuring them against what we could achieve and what we could afford, and all the different things we could do. And it was actually my dad who was Googling around or doing something, and I think it might have been through one of his connections to the Olympics, where the first passive house in Canada was built, that kind of got him onto this strange new European standard at the time. And so he, the more we researched it, the more it made sense, the more we thought we could do it. The more people said it was a bad idea, the more it sounded like a good idea. That's really kind of what kicked it off for us and how we kind of got here. That was almost a decade ago now. So
Wow.
yeah.
A decade ago. So the first house was a project for the two families.
That's right. That's actually where I'm sitting right now. I'm inside a certified passive house. The plaque is just through the window over there. It's a duplex, right? Housing in Victoria is extraordinarily expensive, and this was a way we could affordably live in a nice part of town.
So why did you settle on passive house, building a passive house? You said you wanted to do things that were kind of weird, but 10 years ago, or when you were building this would have been exceptionally new.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, so we started actual construction about 8 years ago. We've lived in the house now for 7, and so we researched for a little bit before we actually started doing it. And so, yeah, I mean, for us at the time, we didn't have an appreciation of the comfort or the health. That for us at the time, we're kind of energy nerds and kind of into the science of it, and that's kind of what we wanted to do. And my wife in particular sort of was forgiving enough to let this happen, and she figured, well, maybe she'd have a house at the end, and if it did all these crazy things I was talking about, maybe that'd be okay too. So she let me do it. And it wasn't until we lived in it for a little while that we really started to understand that the energy efficiency was fun, but it's really the comfort and health that we're after. And I would pay double for the energy now if I had to get the comfort and health. Luckily, we pay a fraction, so it works out pretty well.
And this is often, I think, the misconception, isn't it, around the whole passive house building. We talk about passive house because everyone is so focused on GHG reduction and energy, saving energy. But what passive house brings to the table is if you build for health, if you build for comfort, if you build for resiliency, lo and behold, you get a building that uses very little energy.
Yeah, it's a byproduct. I mean, one or the other is a byproduct. You could say the comfort and health is a byproduct, or you could say the energy efficiency is a byproduct of the comfort and health, right? And we can use the science of energy efficiency to chase that comfort and health. So
absolutely. So it's you get the whole package when you build or interfit to passive house standards. So that ties in with one of the questions I want to run by you, because you really are, even though you don't have any gray hair. You really are a pioneer.
It's there.
Okay, a little bit.
That's project number 2. There's project number 3 right there in the back is project number 4. Yeah.
And you still have hair. You haven't pulled it all out. Project number 6 and 7.
Yeah, it's not a wig. It's not a wig. It's okay.
That's good to hear. So maybe you can help me dispel some of the myths around passive house building standards. And as CEO, I actually have had people say these sorts of things to me. One of the myths is that passive house building standards are a plot. I'm reading here, a plot by Europeans to sell us their expensive doors and windows. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, that seems pretty reasonable, actually. No, you know, it's funny. That's silly. Actually, if there's a plot, it's actually to sell more BC based windows. As
Yeah.
almost all of our projects, we've only actually used European made doors, and only doors, never windows, in one of our projects.
Mhm.
All of the other ones were actually made here in BC, right here on the West Coast. So
Right.
in fact, the ones I have beside me here are all, both of these windows here that I've been, showing other people on other webinars are both made in BC. They're made in the Vancouver area. So,
Right.
it's, if there's a plot, it's actually BC kind of trying to take over the window market for the rest of the country. I think I think that may happen.
Yeah. Well, if there's any Ontario window and Quebec window manufacturers online right now, pay attention because as massive projects move ahead in Ontario and in Quebec, there'll be a call for literally hundreds of thousands of passive house quality windows. So that's good to hear. And I know that BC has really led the way with the whole passive house movement. And of course, you've been involved with that from the beginning. So I guess one of the next questions I hear is that people think that it's really virtually impossible to build to passive house standards. What do you say to that?
I mean, I'm not the most experienced builder. I don't think I'm the best builder out there. I'm certainly, not the most educated passive house certified person out there. And I did it. So if I can do it, I think a lot of people can. There are a lot of things that make it difficult. I mean, we kind of make it difficult on ourselves sometimes,
Right.
but really, I mean, when we look at training our construction crews or our apprentices, um, they're coming out of school with all the basic skills they need to build one of these. They will put a different focus on some of the things, like the air barriers and the level of insulation, and some of the insulation's a little thicker than we might normally do, but they've got the skills for it. It's not like a physically hard thing to do to nail one of these things together. And most
Right.
of us builders are used to following instructions. You pick up the playbook and you follow the instructions, and there you go.
Mhm.
So it's not, the hard part is not the building. I
Right.
think the hard part is getting your mind around what it takes to do the design in a way that is buildable.
Okay.
Um, and I think that if you can get the design right, then the rest is easy. The rest will just fall into place, and it'll be
Right.
really affordable.
So it's not taking a design and then going to a designer and saying, "Can you turn this into a passive house?" It's starting with a clean piece of paper and building the passive house from there.
That's right. Yeah, we've had all the time we get requests from people with a design that is already set, and they come and say, "Oh, well, we'd like to do a passive house now. Can you make this a passive house?" And they're thinking just add some insulation to it or something like that. And the first thing I do is take that set of plans and I throw it in the industrial shredder that I have beside me here, and then we start again, because it really, in order to, unless you've got zillions of dollars, then you are going to need to start from scratch, and you're going to need to do a really proper, robust, probably integrated design, and that takes energy into account from day one. If
Right.
you're not taking energy into account from day one, if it's not right up there with your budget, then as a key factor, then you're not designing for success in passive house.
Mhm. So what are some of those key things that you need to design for? You mentioned you talked broadly about taking energy into account, but what are some of the things that a homeowner, a consumer needs to think about or know about if they're going to be talking to an architect or someone like yourself to get going on a passive house project?
Well, I think a homeowner doesn't need to know much. A homeowner needs to know they want a good house that's comfortable.
Okay.
And then it's up to the architect and the design team to build that integrated design team, and follow that process.
Mhm.
It's our biggest lesson learned in design, I think, is really the shape of the building. The shape of the building is absolutely critical, um, and we often, as passive house nerds, get bogged down on things like insulation and fancy technical window details and all these different, thingamajigs that you can put into these houses and fancy HRVs, and all those are fun, but that's really getting bogged down in the details. That's all the stuff that goes on to the design after the word afterwards.
Yeah.
But the fundamental is that shape. It's the area to volume ratio, and if you have that done well, then everything else is easy. I mean, a box is really easy to build. A box is very cheap to build, and it's very easy to put any number of different types of wall systems on it, any number of HRVs in it, all that sort of stuff. It's the simple form, and it doesn't have to be a box. You know, this house is kind of a T shape,
Right.
and you know, that's fine, but it's a simple form. It's the simple form that will really get you there and set you up for success. And certainly if you're looking at building your first one, you know, a box is a really good place to start. You know, make the next one something a little more interesting, but you know, for the first one, when you're just learning how to do it, you know, we often give our architects inspiration. So I have my kids' toys, right? You know, that is an ideal shape for a passive house. That's an affordable shape right there.
Mm-hmm. And you're touching on the next thing that gets thrown at me, is that to build to passive house standards costs too much money. It's cost prohibitive. But you're saying clearly that's not the truth.
No, I don't. Yeah, I totally disagree with that. First of all, a lot of folks are looking at, you know, pure payback, and that's a terrible way to look at things. We really need to be looking at net present value. And every time we've done a net present value calculation on one of our passive house projects, it's always been full in favor of doing a full passive house, not just halfway, all the
Right.
way. And yeah, it hasn't, a huge cost just haven't been our experience. I mean, they're just not borne out by the data. You know, in this house here, which was our first one, it's the 1.0 model where we made every mistake you can possibly make. And then we went on and did other projects and made more mistakes still. But this one, we figured from what, if we were building kind of just a regular house to what we did, we thought we made about $40,000 worth of mistakes in here. And that was our kind of our cost premium for the project, and that was before there was real robust training from Passive House Canada. There was, you know, we had to translate some things from German, and you know, we weren't that great at that either, and you were kind of making it up as we go. We ordered a lot of stuff out of different places because it wasn't available here off the shelf the way it is now, and so, you know, 40 grand on a house like this, and I mean, in Victoria, our housing prices are cost prohibitive for most people anyways, just for a regular, you know, affordable house. And, you know, we built this house for less than what many other people are building a house of this size for. So, you know, even with that, you know, that school fee of making all these mistakes trying to make it a passive house, and we've seen that on every one of our other projects as well. The one you mentioned in the intro there, the Green Point project, which is,
Right.
you know, Living Building Challenge certified, net positive, and passive house, and you know, it's also on a very sensitive archaeology site and things like that. So and in a remote location. So, you know, add up all that, and that house was built for what I suspect is cheaper than most of the houses down the street. So you know, it's certainly possible. And that house is a rectangle. You know, they started off with a good shape on that one, but you know, it's definitely possible. And the way I describe that cost to people is, well, you can have, you know, a set of stairs that cost $2,000, or you can do a set of stairs that cost $60,000. Both of them do approximately the same thing. They go up, right? And the same thing is true about passive house. You can make it cost zillions and zillions of dollars if you want. That's perfectly fine. It'll work. But you can also make it very cheap, and but that has to be a priority in design as well. So
Right.
a lot of our cost margins are well within the margin for error. You know, if you're looking at the budget side by side, you'd have a hard time telling regular building from passive house.
And it all starts with good design, appropriate design, and it all starts
Exactly.
with some good training, which is something I wanted just to touch on. You touched on briefly because you're very much self-taught in all of this, as you were saying. What you could find and read online, the books you could
Yeah.
find, the not so perfect translation from German. And this is one of the reasons that Passive House Canada exists today, because there was where a lot of architects, engineers, contractors, tradespeople who wanted an organization that could deliver some high quality education, so that folks didn't have to make mistakes, or as many mistakes anyway. We will always make
Yeah.
mistakes,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
as many
This is the
mistakes. So
the
how
training
important
fees have
is,
gone way down as well on that school fees. We call them school fees when we make mistakes on projects, and so
yeah,
yeah,
provided you learn from them and don't
that's
do it
right.
again.
Provided you learn. Yeah, if you don't learn from them, they're just mistakes.
They're just out and out mistakes. So
Yeah.
how important is training when it comes to building to to Passive House standards. And what is what do you see as the future of Passive House building across Canada?
Well, that training, I think pretty critical, I would say, to a high degree of success. Like if you want to kind of fumble your way through it, that's fine. Your chance of success is going to be a lot lower. Um, but certainly for the design team, a high degree of training and understanding is critical, I would say.
Right.
Not just the 120A course. I think that's a really good place to start, but don't stop there. And the going on from there and doing your own research, plus taking some of the other ones that's available, doing site tours, checking out what other people did. I found that the Passive House community in general is very open to sharing, and
Absolutely.
and you'll quite often arrive on a site and spend 4 hours there, not having only planned to spend 20 minutes, and you get a lot more than you bargained for when you ask what's going on here, and people won't shut up about it. So that's a good place to start. And if we have that fundamental clear understanding in design, and we integrate that team with the builder so that everybody can have that clear fundamental understanding of what this project is and why it is and why we've made decisions the way we've done it and how we've assembled it,
Hmm.
then actually the building becomes quite easy, and the training for the people who are actually nailing this thing together is a little bit different. It doesn't necessarily need to be that fully thorough, deep understanding. There are a lot of really good carpenters out there that can accommodate that sort of deep, thorough understanding, and certainly we've tried to recruit a team like that.
Right.
But the reality on bigger sites, especially, is that the folks nailing this together are not these highly educated type folks. And what we need from them is buy-in, and we need quality control.
Right.
And they're the type that would pick up the instructions and follow the instructions. And as long as those instructions are easy for them to follow, they don't need to understand what a thermal bridge is. They don't care. So as long as those instructions are clear and easy to follow, then that's really where they can have success. And that's the sort of training that they need is to be able to perhaps identify the layers. So so when we train our sub trades, for example, we actually make the Passive House training as part of our safety program. Because if you damage our air barriers, it's a safety issue. Somebody's going to come there and give you a beat down. And so it becomes part of our safety program to say, hey, this is what the membrane looks like. We don't want you to hurt this. This is very important to us. Don't wreck it. If you do wreck it, please report it so we can fix it. You're not in trouble. If you report it, that's okay. We'll fix it. It's not a big deal. If you try and hide it, you're in real big trouble. And that's how we approach it. So we kind of create that buy-in, and then we compete too, right? So we bet on what our air barrier test is going to be, right? And everybody bets. The electrician, the laborers, everybody bets on it. So we have some prestigious prize like a $4.50 Tim Hortons gift card that's half used or something like that, right? Something really classy. And so we've been doing this for years, so that we get people showing up on their days off, or trades that aren't even involved in the project yet. They're coming later in the project, showing up for that air test to see
Right.
what it is, because they all want to know what it is.
Yeah.
And it's all about creating that buy-in really when we're on site.
Yeah,
So
and when you mentioned buy-in, so Passive House Canada does offer training for trades,
mhm,
trades courses, along with engineers, architects, building scientists, and homeowners, consumers. Um, but I was sitting in on a trades course just a short while ago, and the instructor said to me, sometimes the first day is a little rough. You're told to be there by the boss or whatever, but by the second day, everyone has bought in, and that's
mhm,
exactly what I witnessed. It was quite amazing. Um, by the second day, when people were really getting the profound change that this would mean,
yeah,
how they bought into the concept. And then I heard all the stories you're talking about trades. It's their day off, and they're coming in to watch and take
yeah,
part in the air barrier test. They're running around with smoke sticks, or they're pointing
yeah,
out leakage outside, and they're not even being paid to be there. But it's such an interesting way of doing things, and you've achieved great buy-in when
mhm,
people start showing up like that. And
exactly.
it's not rocket science to get our trades folks up to speed, but I can tell you, are we ever going to need, and we really need as a building industry, a lot more tradespeople trained up in passive house standards. So that's one of the big pushes we have to work with in Ontario community colleges. We're working with some great folks in BC and Alberta. We're starting to work in Quebec because we need those folks, those tradespeople with really good training.
That's yeah, no, it's exactly right. And it creating that buy-in, I think, is so important, and really understanding who that person is. I mean, a lot of times when we take training, even as licensed builders here, it's trained to us at a level that is, really high level, very technical and things like that. But, like I say, the people who are actually hammering these nails together, maybe they didn't graduate from high school. Maybe they don't read so well, right? Some of them might have just gotten out of jail, and these are the people who are putting in particular the large buildings together. And so the training, it's quite a different focus. Not to say those people aren't very skilled. A lot of them are very skilled, and it's just not quite the technical kind of jargony stuff that we quite
Right.
often see even as licensed builders. So it's quite a big frontier, and it's exciting.
Absolutely. I don't need university physics in order
Yeah,
to build this. I need someone to show me, how do I put a window in? How do I
yeah,
peel back the sticky tape on that fenestration tape so that
that's
it
right.
doesn't get all over me? And
Stick
we
this
do
here.
a good
Yeah,
job. So listen
yeah,
though, and I think this is the real reason people are here, right?
yeah,
We said this is about the unvarnished truth, and
yeah.
Bernhardt construction and your tales. Of things done well and things maybe not done so well. But I will say, Mark, I've been in the house you're in right now.
Hmm.
Mind you, I was kept downstairs. I wasn't allowed into the upstairs portion. And I came home to my somewhat drafty and leaky 1964 era home and said to my wife, "It's ruined forever. I love my house, but once I spent a bit of time in a passive house, a certified passive house, I can never go back. It is so quiet, so comfortable." So for your first house, you guys really did a fantastic job, quite frankly. And
Thank you.
I think
Yeah.
the fact that you're still living there demonstrates that you built a
Yeah.
really great house. But
Well,
tell
being a
me,
builder, we're plotting about moving already, but I'm not
okay,
sure that'll actually happen. But
yeah,
I'm
no,
never
no,
satisfied.
it's too much to pack up and move all the
Yeah,
kids and dogs and
that's
things
right.
like that, and beehives. I hear you have a
Yeah,
bee.
yeah,
But what I wanted to ask you is, what are some of the things you've learned?
yeah. Well, let me get you volume one here. It's you know, if aside from the shape thing, I mean, that's probably been our, one of our most expensive lessons, is that learning that really shape is the main thing that we have to worry about.
Okay.
Um, but the other thing that I think is probably, pretty on par for our most expensive and kind of most shameful waste of effort, is learning that people don't care about energy efficiency. As a general rule, people love to talk about how we want to save the polar bears and we want to, be all energy efficient. I love to brag to my friends about how many energy efficient light bulbs or my miles per gallon on my car. But when it comes down to actually making a purchasing decision on something like a house, something as big as a house, it's not what drives people. And we've done now post-occupancy surveys for almost all of our developments. So there's a good number of people that it's a decent sample size now. And the top 5 reasons of why they actually bought this house, in those top fives, not one of them actually listed energy efficiency as in the top 5, which was kind of, when we first started doing this, a little bit shocking to us, because of course, we're energy nerds, and we think, oh, this is so great, look at how, and but no, it wasn't that. It was all health and comfort. It's always health and comfort. And in that sixplex, which you showed a picture of there before, that was the one in the North Park neighborhood here in town. Uh, that was a real interesting one, because when we go and we talk to the owners now, one of their main comments is that we can't hear the busy road. And so it's a quality of life thing. And that's what they talk about. They don't talk about how low their energy bills are. Oh yeah, yeah, that's fine. that's good. But what we've really done is we've taken our kind of our original marketing brochure and we've turned it upside down, right? It used to be a footnote that health and all that sort of stuff, that was what we started with, and we've taken that, we've turned it upside down so that energy performance is a footnote, and the big is that health and comfort. And you still mention it, but it's a footnote, and it's all about the health and comfort. And I think that took us a little while to learn, and now that we've learned that, well, that's where we see our success, right? And it comes in very simple forms often when we have a client saying, oh, I want a fireplace. They don't actually want the fireplace. Nobody wants to go out and chop wood. Nobody wants to burn gas in their living room. Nobody wants that. What they want is the cozy feeling that the fireplace provides. And that's once we can kind of get our minds around that and kind of drill down into what they want, we find the same thing with radiant flooring all the time. And it can be very nice, but what you want is a warm, cozy feeling. You don't actually want pipes running through your house and some machine chugging away in your basement. So I think if we can come to those two kind of fundamental things, is that people want health and comfort, and that's how we got to sell it to them. And arriving at a good shape, I think we're pretty well set for success. All the insulations and all that sort of stuff, that can be figured out.
Yeah.
That's the easy part.
So I think we've touched on two important things, and the one is the original shape, making sure that you start with a simple shape. Another is that as a contractor, when you're out to sell passive house to folks, that it's about that health and that comfort, and oh, by the way, super low energy usage.
Yeah.
What
else?
I think what other things have you discovered?
Well, I hate to keep dwelling on this, but one of the things that the Home Builders Association does every year is they do a survey of the top 10 must-haves in a house across Canada, Canada-wide. And last year, walk-in closets dropped to number 2, which is completely unheard of. Like, walk-in closet has been number 1 since we lived in caves, and now it's dropped out of number 1 in favor of energy efficiency. And it's interesting though. So yeah, of the top 10, I believe now 6 have something to do with energy efficiency. On that list is actually HRV or ERV, some sort of managed ventilation system. And so there, that was kind of confusing, because actually ventilation is one of the hardest things for us to sell as a builder.
Mm-hmm.
And our problem is that we're calling it ventilation. And when I say that to a client, they think, oh, that sounds expensive and kind of noisy, and it's not complicated. Am I going to have to change a filter or something like that? And it sounds like I'm going to do maintenance, and I don't need that. And plus, it doesn't really change, the fundamental, performance of the house that dramatically. So they quite often that hits their cutting room floor. But that survey, what they did is they called it a fresh air system. And if you ask a client, do you want fresh air in your house? They say, yeah, for sure. And in fact, I'm willing to pay extra for it. And so it's, we've got it's all about how we spin it, right? And then, okay, well, then let's go get an HRV, and that's your fresh air system. It's not a ventilation system. And then, things become kind of come easy on that. And and then all that other stuff, like the details on the insulation. I think we've tried just about every different wall system that's in all the passive house books, and made up a few of our own, including in concrete and wood and all sorts of different stuff. We've tried mass timber now, and all of them have their pros and cons, and I don't know that there's ever like a best. And people often ask us, like, what's the best passive house wall? And I started to say, I don't know, man, I'm still looking. It's just like there's a time and a place for everything, right? There, in some places we might use foam, in some places we might avoid foam and go for something like sheep's wool, or who knows, right? Or wood fiber insulation. But it's time and a place for the project. What are our values, right? If we're measuring carbon, that's going to steer us away from foam. If we're not measuring carbon, well, maybe we're worried about budget and we're going to steer towards foam or something like that. So it's just about what direction the project takes us.
Right. Yeah. Any other important lessons that you want to share with builders who've tuned in?
You know, it's not that bad. It sounds crazy, but I would say if you're a builder looking at it, you know, we have a tendency to price in fear, and sometimes that fear is legitimate. And there, you know, certainly, you know, there's you're going to price in some uncertainty on your first job. Uh, but it's really not that bad. It is really not that different from what you're building already. Your carpenters already know how to cut wood, they already know how to drill screws, and you're just going to drill them and screw them in a different order. And you're still going to, you know, if you've got a good designer you're working with, it's particularly if you're on that integrated team, this is going to unfold like any one of your other projects with a few different priorities in the middle. Um, you know, pricing it has been relatively pretty easy. It's the same process. You count the studs, you count the insulation,
Mhm.
you know, it's all exactly the same process. There's no secret sauce that's kind of hidden behind the curtain here. I think it's, you know, what's behind the curtain is actually kind of disappointing because there's no sparkly magic. It's
Ah,
just building with thicker walls usually. So that's, you know, it's there's not a lot to be afraid of behind that curtain.
no, that's good. That's good to hear. Um, so, Mark, what next for Bernhardt Contracting? What are you going to be doing next? What's
Yeah,
the
well,
next big,
that's
what's the next big thing on the horizon?
I think sky's the limit on where we could go with a lot of these things. Lot of cool stuff coming up. Actually, we're just now working on completing number 8 certified project.
Hmm.
So there's a few dozen projects out there that are you know, gonna not quite certify or weren't ever intending to certify, but number 8 for full certification, actually it'll be Passive House Plus, is just
Hmm.
finishing up now. And then there's, you know, some small developments, just finalizing design right now that'll be coming up.
Right.
And So a lot of passive house happening around Vancouver Island, and that'll be pretty exciting. One of the things I think we're probably going to spend most of our time on, though, is actually helping other builders do it. You know,
Good.
I'm not a very patient person, so I've never had a lot of fun talking to homeowners about paint colors, and I find that's what we spend most of our time on when we're building passive house. And I'm like, come on, man, just let me talk about insulation here for a little bit. But that's, you know, the easy part. The hard part is picking the paint color.
Right.
So you know, I'd much rather let other builders do that part and leave me to the insulation part. So we were doing a lot of that,
You can teach
as well
them
as,
about building, yeah. So you can teach them about the building envelope, the insulation, etc., and they can deal with paint chip samples, etc.
yeah, and we'll take, you know, some of them that are really afraid, like especially the ones here in town that are really afraid of these big walls, is we've actually taken the envelope part of it as a subcontract, so they don't have to worry about it. We can remove that risk. And so far that where we've done that, actually the builders have all taken it back from us because they look at it and said, well, if these idiots can do it, so can we.
Great.
You know, it's
Okay.
I don't know how much long term there is in that. Pretty soon all the builders in town will know how to do it, and then we'll get kicked out of that niche, which I'm kind of excited about actually, because there's, you know, there's lots of other things to do. And you know, we're gearing up for a number of big building blower door tests, which is
Right.
just quite fun. We you know, because we have all the equipment for EnerGuide and working with the, you know, the minimum code type stuff, the big building blower door tests get kind of fit in there really nice, and they're kind of fun too.
Okay, so here, this is a question for you, Mark. From your experience, which air barrier approach has proven to be the best at achieving the ACH requirements for passive house, exterior WRB/AB, interior AB, etc., in conjunction with high performance tapes or sealants?
Yeah, good question. So I think we've tried all of them, including just about all the brands, at least that you can get here easily in North America. Some really impressive results out of all of them. We've had the best success with a membrane approach, usually a mid-wall. So that would be a structural framed wall with an air barrier mid-wall, and then some sort of exterior insulation, either a cellulose insulation or, you know, rock wool or whatever, something on the outside. So some sort of membrane mid-wall has been our best success. We've tried the plywood and the OSB. Actually, this house is an OSB with tape air barrier, and it worked reasonably well, but we found the labor cost to be kind of higher, and so the expensive part is the tape too. So usually the membranes themselves are kind of the cheaper part. So if we can roll out a big, wide sheet of membrane and one strip of tape around the house, or that tends to be a little bit more cost effective for us. And our labor is also very expensive. So anytime we can cover a lot of area with a material that's easy to transport and put up, that's a good way to go. And the nice thing is that, when we did this house, we were special ordering the materials, and now there's a number of places where we can get the materials online, or and they come in 2 days, which is pretty fast, or we can go down and get them off the shelf in town here. So pretty easy to do. But I highly recommend the membrane approach. Let the structural wall be the structural wall. Put an air barrier membrane in there, whether it's the air barrier and the weather barrier. I'm not sure that really makes much of a difference, but I would say, mid wall on the outside where there's no plugs, no drains, all that sort of stuff is the way to go.
Good. Another question, Stephanie?
I'm back. Sorry about my,
Great.
somehow my GoToWebinar just logged off. I'm back here. Mike, can you actually estimate the extra cost over building to code for essentially the same building, especially for a MURB?
Below 5% is if you're doing it properly, and I mean properly by starting with design. So if you've got a good design, it's below 5%. Poor design, it's really expensive. I think it really depends on what you're comparing to as well. So, there's base code, which we call, barely legal, right? That's the minimum standard. Is it illegal to do worse than that? And in my experience, particularly here in BC, very, very few builders are actually building to that. So we're not really comparing to that. What we're really comparing to is kind of code plus, or what I'd feel, pretty good about producing and be proud of. And if we're talking about that, in many cases, there is no cost difference. And
Right.
That's really what we've seen a lot of, is that, you're already putting in pretty good windows. The difference to go from pretty good windows to really good windows is pretty minor. The difference to go from a, pretty good air barrier to a really good air barrier, again, pretty minor. Insulation is relatively cheap. So, we're not talking about a lot of costs. If I can shed that big heating system that I needed in the regular house, that's a pretty big cost savings, and I can spend a lot of money on insulation for that cost. So, I would argue in a lot of cases, particularly in the bigger buildings, it's almost nothing. In the the 3-story commercial we did, the Charter Telecom, where we did the envelope contract for that, and we were on the design team as well, and done as an integrated design project. That one, I know exactly how much it costs to make it a passive house, because our contract was the only one that was different. Everybody else was the same, and it was about $300,000 ish, give or take a little bit, for a little bit. But that's a 3-story commercial Class A office space. This is not a cheap building to begin with. The server wire that went into that building was more expensive than the passive house. Pretty easy to make the numbers work on stuff like that.
Right, and I'm hearing this more and more, that this is a fallacy, that passive house design or construction has to cost an awful lot more. There are jurisdictions where some of the passive house building is actually costing less. I'm thinking about social housing that's being built in Pennsylvania right now, for example, where they've mandated passive house. First year it was about 5% more. The next year it was about the same. And I think the recent stats I saw was that the passive house designs that were coming in were 3 to 5% less than standard, but it was because people had learned how to build to passive house standards. They had the team assembled, they'd done it before. And so the social housing organization is reaping all the benefits of passive house cost reduction, and the folks who are getting to live in these buildings are getting to live in a very, as you pointed out earlier on, a very healthy and a very comfortable
home. Yeah, I would agree. Like the first time you do it out of the gate, maybe you spend a little bit more money. That happens. That's learning. But the next time you're going to cut those costs, and I think every time we've done it, we've cut the cost down even more. And you know, it's a learning process, and that happens for everybody. But it's nothing to be afraid of. 5% is our margin for error, so you know, it's hard to even tell if they actually cost more or not. And the house I'm sitting in now, I mean, there's, you know, we now have 7 years of data to actually show that this house was the cheapest house we could have built for ourselves, because the upgrades, the extra that we put onto this house, we put that onto our mortgage, and the mortgage amount that it went up is less than what we saved on energy. So if we had built ourselves a minimum code house here, it would have been more expensive for us to live.
Yeah, and you by now would be replacing rotting out windows, etc.
Yeah, or something at least, yeah, or paying for asthma medication or something like that, right? You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Louise, is there now we're fast running out of time, Mark, but Louise, is there one more question we can slip in here?
Yes, sir, we do, and this is a very interesting one, Mark. Do you generally find the building inspectors are in tune, or do you find that you often are educating them?
Yeah, the simple answer, short answer, no, they're not. But it really depends on where you go. A lot of our building inspectors locally here have been fabulous, and they, you know, they haven't necessarily understood what we're doing, but they understand that we're well researched, and we, you know, we have a good level of skill, and they know what we're doing. The nice thing in BC is that we have builder licensing, and so we are developing that respectful relationship with building inspectors. They understand that we're qualified and we're educated. You can't just one day decide to be a builder because you own a hammer. In the rest of the country, you know, where there is no builder licensing, you know, that's maybe a bit more tricky, and that respect isn't necessarily as easy to generate. So we've had a real easy time of it. You know, everything we've done is code compliant. We haven't gone for any special exemptions or anything like that. So, and it's very easy to show. So we've had a pretty easy time.
Yeah, and builder licensing is coming to Ontario in the very near future. So it will be interesting to see how that dynamic changes. And I know we at Passive House Canada has been working with you know, the Building Officials Association of BC, and we're starting to talk to other groups across Canada to help them with some understanding of Passive House standards, so that when their folks are out inspecting a building or looking at plans, they have a better understanding of what's happening. So, Mark, we're over by 28 seconds. And I want to thank you very much for taking the time to be with us today and to share some of those unvarnished truth, those stories of education on the job. And I think, quite frankly, anyone involved in any profession, any building, if they were truthful, would admit that no matter what type of building they're doing, there's education happening with every job. So thank you for sharing that with us. And we'll be very interested in following your career and the buildings that you and Bernhardt Contracting are building in BC in the coming months and years ahead. So thank you very much. I will get. Yeah, well, thank you. And we'll, you know, if people have questions for you that we didn't get to answer today, we're more than happy to forward them on or to answer them on your behalf, so folks can type them into the chat area. I will now get us to Mark, just to turn our cameras off for a minute. And Louise, I'm sure you're going to tell me if you can't see the presentation that I have. Before I leave, Mark, I just wanted to leave these pictures up, these 3 pictures up of some of the buildings that Bernhardt has built. That top picture is the first house that Bernhardt Contracting built. That's the house that I have toured. I've also toured one of the units in that middle house. They're all absolutely like Passive House standard homes. They're so unbelievably quiet and comfortable. They're great places to call home. So let me move on with our next slide, if it's going to let me. There we are. A couple of messages from our sponsor. If you're interested in Passive House, we have our Passive House Canada conference coming up November 18th to 20th. It's called Building for Resilience. Watch our website for more information. Sign up for our newsletter, become a member, and we'll keep you up to speed with what's happening there. But one of the corporate membership benefits is our education. And you heard Mark talk about the need for education. He didn't have the benefit of this education when he started to build his first project. And what we have a course that's beginning May the 4th. This is our pathway to certification. So by the time you take these 3 courses, you'll be ready to write the Passive House Institute's exam and become a certified Passive House professional. And for our corporate members, we have a buy one, receive one free. So if you sign your company up, your first employee, we'll pay full price. Second employee, you get in for free. And that's a $3,350 savings over buying those courses individually. So there's more information in the handouts that are attached to this presentation, but I wanted to draw this to your attention. And there are benefits whether you are a corporate member or whether you are an individual member to belonging to Passive House Canada. And not least among them, of course, is that you are supporting our work with government in advocating for these high performance standards. So next week, I will be joined by Evelyn Bouchard, who's an architect in Quebec and also a board member of Passive House Canada, a very a very passionate individual when it comes to the environment and passive house building. And I know that you will enjoy my conversation with Evelyn next week. So until then, everyone be safe. I hope your families are safe. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you online next week. Thank you very much. I'm Chris Ballard, CEO of Passive House Canada. Have a great and safe week.